All right, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about evaluating limits at infinity. But what is a limit at infinity? A limit at infinity can look something like this, where we have the limit as x approaches infinity of some function, and I'm just going to write x squared plus 1 as an example. But this would be a limit at infinity because our x is approaching infinity. Now this could also be negative infinity, and that would also be a limit at infinity. So it could be positive infinity or negative infinity. But how do we evaluate these? We can't just plug in infinity or negative infinity because infinity and negative infinity aren't numbers that we can use to evaluate. They're more a representation of numbers getting larger or numbers getting smaller. Well, we have some more rules that we can add to our tool belt for evaluating limits. So let's go over these rules. Our first rule is that the limit as x approaches infinity for some constant c is always going to be equal to that constant c. So if we had the limit as x approaches infinity of 5, that would be equal to 5. Then our next rule would be the limit as x approaches infinity of x, that's going to be equal to infinity. And that's because as you plug in larger and larger values of x, the function x is going to get larger itself. If I plug in 1, I'm going to get 1. If I plug in 10, I'll get 10. If I plug in 100, I'll get 100. It's just going to keep getting bigger. So it would be infinity. And technically we would say that this limit doesn't exist because it's really not heading at a specific value, but we can say that it's approaching infinity rather than just saying nothing at all. And these two limits would also be the same for negative infinity. So the limit as x approaches negative infinity of c is also equal to c, and the limit as x approaches negative infinity of x is equal to negative infinity. Because the limit as x approaches anything for a constant is always that same constant, and the limit as x approaches smaller and smaller numbers for x is going to be smaller as well. And so what you're going to see is most functions that are like this, that are simple, that aren't rational expressions, are going to be generally pretty easy to evaluate at infinity because we just have to see what happens as we plug in larger and larger or smaller and smaller numbers. So if we were to look back at our original example there that I wrote down, we had the limit as x approaches infinity of x squared plus 1. If we plugged in larger and larger values of x into here, we would be squaring whatever that value is and then adding 1 to it. So it's just going to keep getting larger and larger. So this would be approaching infinity. And if we looked at the limit as x approaches negative infinity for that same function, this is also going to be approaching infinity, not negative infinity, because if we plug in a negative number in here and we square it, it's going to become positive, and then we're adding 1. So no matter what numbers we plug into this function, the values are just still going to keep getting larger and larger. And so while this may have made you think that this was going to be negative infinity, we still have to see what is happening to our values when we plug them in. We can't always make the assumption that because we're going to negative infinity that our answer is going to be negative infinity. But what if we were to look at a limit as x approaches infinity of a rational expression, such as 3x over x plus 1? What would this be equal to? We could plug in larger and larger values of x, but as these functions get more complex, that's going to take longer and longer to do, so we're going to want an easier way to do this. So the easier way is to learn two new special limits. And so let's look at these special limits. First, we have the limit as x approaches infinity of 1 over x is going to be equal to 0. And then we have the limit as x approaches negative infinity of 1 over x is also equal to 0. And this would be true if you were to look at the graph of this function. It would look a little bit like this. This would be 1 over x right here. If this is the x-axis, as we get larger numbers, this function is slowly approaching 0. And if we looked at it from the negative side of the x-axis, as our numbers get smaller in this direction, we're also headed towards y equals 0. So these two special limits are true. And you could also see that if you were to plug in larger and larger values and smaller values. But for the sake of time, hopefully the graph was sufficient enough for you to see why these are true. So we can use these special limits to evaluate a limit like this in a simpler way than just plugging in values. So in order to evaluate this limit, what we're going to do is we're going to multiply by a form of 1 of that special limit that we just looked at, and we're going to use that to simplify this function. So let me show you what I mean. We multiply by a fraction in a form of 1 over x, which we're allowed to do. You can always multiply by a form of 1. And then this would be equal to the limit as x approaches infinity of 3x divided by x over x plus 1 over x, right? We multiplied 1 over x by each term here, and we also multiplied it to the top here. So then this x and this x are going to cancel, and then this is going to become 1. And so then we can rewrite our limit to be the limit as x approaches infinity of 3 divided by 1 plus 1 over x. So now why is that important? Why is this useful in any way? Well, now if we took the limit of each function on the top and the bottom of this fraction, we can use our special limit to evaluate this pretty nicely. So then I can write that this equals the limit as x approaches infinity of 3 divided by the limit as x approaches infinity of 1 plus 1 over x. And we know from our property at the beginning that the limit as x approaches infinity of a constant is going to be equal to that constant. And then on the bottom, we have the limit as x approaches infinity of a constant plus our special limit, which we know that as x approaches infinity for 1 over x, it's 0. So on the bottom, we'd have 1 plus 0. And so then this would be equal to 3. And so this allowed us to evaluate our limit as x approaches infinity without having to plug anything in. We were actually able to evaluate this using some special limits, which gives us a nice answer in a generally quick way. But what if we were to look at a limit of a function where we have a power of x that's greater than 1? Is our method here still going to work? Well, let's try it out here. If I were to multiply by 1 over x divided by 1 over x, what would happen? Well, we're going to have the limit as x approaches infinity, and then let's multiply our terms. We'll have x times 1 over x, which is just going to be 1. And then in the bottom, we're going to have 1 over x times x squared, which is going to be x. And then we're going to have 2 times 1 over x, so then we'll have 2 over x. And so this wasn't quite helpful because we still have an x right here that we're not going to be able to use a special limit for. Because if we were going to take the limit of the numerator and the denominator here, that x would still result in x approaching infinity, which we do not want to have in our denominator. We want to be able to use our special limits and make things easier to evaluate. And so we would actually have to multiply by 1 over x again, and then we would have it in a form that we could evaluate. But instead of multiplying by 1 over x 2 times, we can do this all in one step by multiplying by 1 over x squared instead. So if we switched it to x squared in the bottom of our denominators, then we would have the limit as x approaches infinity of 1 over x divided by x squared times 1 over x squared, which will be 1, plus 2 over x squared. Now this is something where we can use our special limits. I see a special limit here, and I also see it here. Now, you might not see it originally because, well, I thought we were talking about 1 over x. And so the cool thing about our special limit is that it doesn't matter what the power of x is. Because if you remember, our special limit was x approaching infinity of 1 over x is equal to 0. Well, it doesn't matter how many of those 1 over x's we have. If we have the limit as x approaches infinity of 1 over x squared, that's equal to the limit as x approaches infinity of 1 over x times 1 over x. And if you remember our limit properties, if we have two functions multiplied together, it's just equal to the limits of those two functions multiplied together. So this would still be equal to 0 times 0, which equals 0. And this would be true for any multiple of this 1 over x term, right? We could have 1 over x cubed, 1 over x to the fourth. It wouldn't matter because it would still be equal to 0. And this is still true if we multiplied it by some constant. So instead of 1 over x squared, if we had 2 over x squared like we do in our example, this would still be equal to 0 as well because we could pull out that 2 and have the limit as x approaches infinity of 1 over x squared, and this would be equal to 2 times that limit, and so it's still going to be 0. So no matter what, as long as you have some kind of constant, whether it be 1 or any other number, on top and an x to some power, you can use that special limit that we learned. So then, what we learn here is that when multiplying by this form of 1, you're going to want to multiply with 1 over x to the highest power that you see in your function. So in this case, we have a power of 1 here, and then we have a power of 2 here. So that means we're going to be multiplying by that power of 2 with our 1 over x term here. So we'd have 1 over x squared rather than just 1 over x. So we don't have to do it multiple times like I showed you earlier. So then finally, we can use our special limit to see that this is going to be equal to 0 on the top divided by 1 plus the limit of this, which is 0. So we have 1 plus 0, and this is going to be equal to 0 divided by 1, which is equal to 0. So then how about the limit as x approaches infinity of x cubed divided by x squared plus 1? So let's first look for the highest power of x in our function, which I see is x cubed because we have x to the third here, but x squared here. So let's try multiplying by our form of 1 over x cubed divided by 1 over x cubed. So then we say that that is equal to the limit as x approaches infinity of x cubed times 1 over x cubed, which is 1, divided by x squared divided by x cubed. So that's just going to be 1 over x. And then we have 1 times 1 over x cubed. So we'll have plus 1 over x cubed. And then if we were to use our special limits here, we would have that this is equal to 1 divided by 0 plus 0, which equals, 1 over 0, which is undefined. So in this case, it didn't work. So here we would actually have to still plug in values of x and see what happens as they get larger. So if I plugged in 1, right, if x equals 1, that would get us a value of 1/2. And then if I plugged in x equals 10, I'd get 9.9. And if I put in x equals 100, then we'd have 99.9. And so as our values of x get larger, so is our output. So in this case, we would actually say that this limit approaches infinity. So although this limit doesn't go to a specific number, we can say that it is getting larger, so it approaches infinity. And so now, without even realizing it, we just learned the 3 guidelines for evaluating limits at infinity for rational functions. Because as you'll notice, these 3 limits here are the past 3 examples that we have looked at, each of them with their respective answers. And so let's look at these guidelines here. The first one says that if the highest degree in the numerator is equal to the highest degree in the denominator, then the limit is equal to the ratio of the leading coefficients. So in this case, the highest degree in the numerator and denominator was 1 because they're both x to the first power. So then we would take the coefficients, 3 for the numerator and 1 for the denominator, and divide them to get 3. 3 divided by 1 is 3. Then our second guideline says that if the highest degree of the numerator is less than the denominator, then the limit is 0. And that was true in this case. The highest degree in the numerator was 1, which is less than the highest degree in the denominator, which was 2. And we ended up finding that the limit was 0. And then our third guideline says that if the highest degree of the numerator is greater than the highest degree of the denominator, then the limit does not exist, or could approach infinity or negative infinity. And we found that for our example here, where we had x cubed, which was a greater degree than the denominator of x squared, and we found that it did not exist, but it did approach infinity. And so these are the 3 guidelines that apply to these limits at infinity of rational functions. So you might want to take a note of these because they're going to be helpful in checking your answers going forward. So now for a quick note, it's important to realize that if you have a limit as x approaches infinity or negative infinity of a function and it equals a finite limit L, then the function has a horizontal asymptote at the value y equals L. And so what would be an example of that? Well, if we look at that first function that we looked at earlier, remember we said that when we took the limit as x approaches infinity of this function, it equaled 3. And so since this limit is equal to 3, we would say that this function has a horizontal asymptote at y equals 3. Because here's the graph of this function. And as we see, as the function gets closer to y equals 3, it's never going to actually hit that value of y equals 3. And it's the same from this side as well. And so just like that note said, we have a horizontal asymptote at that limit that we found, that y equals 3 value. And so that's a cool application of our limits at infinity. We can use them to find horizontal asymptotes fairly easily. Okay, so now for another example, and this one we're going to be looking at a function that has a square root in it. And so what do we do in this case? But I do want to first point out how we would do this with our first method of multiplying by a form of 1. And notice that we have x squared down here under that square root, and we have a normal x up here. And so here's what I want to point out is that 1 over x is equal to the square root of 1 over x squared. And this is true because the square root of 1 is 1 and the square root of x squared is x. But this is going to be really handy because we can actually multiply this function by 1 over x divided by the square root of 1 over x squared, and that is a form of 1 that we can use. And so this will allow for some nice multiplication of radicals in the denominator. So let's simplify this. We're going to have that this is equal to the limit as x approaches infinity of 3x times 1 over x, so we'll have 3 minus 4 over x divided by 1 divided by x squared times 2 over x squared, which is just going to be 2, so we'll have our square root and then 2, and then we'll have plus 3 times 1 over x squared, which is going to be 3 over x squared. So then we know we're going to have 3 minus 0, because this is our special limit right here, divided by the square root of 2, because a constant, as x approaches infinity of a constant, is 2, and then plus our special limit, once again, is going to be 0. So in this case, we'll have 3 over the square root of 2, and that would be the answer to our limit here. And so now to go back to our guideline of the degree of our x term, in this case, they're actually the same, which is why we have this ratio of the coefficients. You'll notice we have 3 and the square root of 2 as our coefficients here. And the square root of x squared is equal to x. So in this case, this x and this x have the same degree. Even though they look different, they're actually the same because this x squared is underneath a square root. But how would this change if we wanted to look at this function as x approaches negative infinity? Well, let's look at the graph. So here's our function again, but this time we're looking at it as x approaches negative infinity, like I just suggested. And here's the graph of that same function. Now, previously when we looked at limits as x approaches negative infinity, we could look at it the same way that we did as x approached infinity. But if we have a square root, whether it be in the denominator or the numerator, when we look at a limit as x approaches negative infinity, we actually have to do something a little bit different, or else we'll get an incorrect answer. Because a function like this, as you can see in the graph here, has two horizontal asymptotes. We said that if you could find the limit as x approaches infinity or negative infinity, and you would get a value, that was a horizontal asymptote. Well, in this case, a function with a square root in the numerator or the denominator is going to have two horizontal asymptotes. And so what you're going to have to do is take that into account when you come from the negative side. Notice that we have a horizontal asymptote when we approach infinity, and we also have a different one when we approach negative infinity. And so how do we handle this? What do we do? Well, the easiest way is just to look at the negative side of the function. So let's look at that in action real quick. So we're back with our work here when we did as x approaches infinity, except now we're looking at it as x approaches negative infinity, and the way we're going to change this is when we go into our second step here, because the process is the same for the most part. And so what we're going to do is add a negative in front of the square root part of the function. So this would translate down to here, and then we would have 3 over negative square root of 2, which would just be equal to negative 3 divided by the square root of 2. And so that would be our answer in this case, because this would be a different horizontal asymptote than positive 3 over the square root of 2. And so really the only difference here is that when you're approaching negative infinity for a rational function that has an x under a square root, you need to remember to add a negative because you're going to be looking at the opposite side that you normally would be looking at. And so this makes sense. If we look back here at our graph of this function, we have our asymptote at y equals 3 over the square root of 2, and we have the one we just found at y equals negative 3 over the square root of 2. So you really have to be careful when you see functions that have square roots in them, because if it's approaching negative infinity, you do it differently than how you would do it if you had positive infinity. The main process is the same, but you need to remember to add that negative so that you get the correct answer. All right, and so that's all I had for this lesson. Hopefully all of that made sense. If you have any questions, feel free to put those in the comments, and be sure to check out the example video. We'll have plenty of examples for you to look at, and so I'll have that video in the description as well as at the end of this video for you to click on. But until then, I'll see you next time.